Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, as we kick off the dead portion of the offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. Plenty of stuff still to talk about, plenty of debates to be had. Johnny Mac, how you doing in this Thursday edition of Birds 365?
Good. Well, there was one move. The Eagles hired a 10-year-old for the person. I'm joking.
Yeah, Preston Tiffany, Johnny Mac. Eagles hired Preston Tiffany. He's
the boy, he looks young.
Player personnel.
Boy, he looks young.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we don't know where he's going to be, what position he's going to have. The Eagles are probably going to announce their front office changes. Probably wouldn't surprise me if it's this week because everybody's going to go on vacation. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Preston Tiffany, another SEC guy. They like getting SEC people on the field, off the field. I hired Montgomery Van Gorder, who was coach at Georgia, for the coaching staff. Now they he was at LSU. And that's one thing. I've talked to a bunch of people around the NFL. Like when we talk about the changing landscape of college football, NFL people are in the same boat as we are. They're like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know where it's going, what's going on. So to get somebody who's been an expert in that, and Tiffany was sort of running the personnel department. As funny as that says, it seems for a college team, they're run almost, or a lot of the higher profile organizations are now being run like an NFL team with a GM and a personnel guy. And he was running LSU's personnel department. And before that, Ole Miss, when they had their best season ever. So, it makes sense that they get somebody who understands as best you can the landscape of college football, because it's like the wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Another addition to the front office for the Philadelphia Eagles, Preston Tiffany, is in. We don't know his role yet, right, John? You said you don't know his role. We don't know what it's going to be yet.
No, he's, if you look at his resume, it could be football operations, it could be that side, or it could be scouting as well. So, especially, they lost, if you think about it, they lost, one of their highest level college scouts. Now, I don't think that he's going to be like a high level coming in. He just graduated college, I think, in 2020. So very young. I don't think it's like he's going to be Joe Douglas type of role. I think it's going to be, more of a probably mid-range role. I wouldn't say, starting from scratch, but a mid-range role, probably in college, the college side of it, college scouting would be my guess. But that's just pure speculation.
Yep, we'll see. Another guy added to the front office for the Philadelphia Eagles. Preston Tiffany is in. John, in other news, the Eagles did sign Jihad Campbell's rookie deal got done. It's a 4-year deal, $14.9 million, fully guaranteed. We always knew it was going to get done, but it is good to see them get that done. I believe just one draft pick remains, John, for the Eagles to sign, and that's Andrew Makuba, their second-round safety. But Jihad Campbell under contract, so good news there. Almost all done on the signings of the rookies from this year's class.
Yeah, I'm always glad because even though it gets lesser and lesser each year, like there's still some people out there who worry about rookies signing. I don't know why, but they're still out there. Old habits die hard for some. But yeah, it's no longer a big deal. It used to be a very big deal when you would have potential holdouts years and years ago. But now everything's slotted, so it's just a matter of timing. And the second round picks, for those worried about the second round picks, don't worry about it. It's about trying to push down guaranteed money as far as possible it's a slotting system. Makuba's last in the second round, so he's got to wait for all the other dominoes to fall in front of him. Doesn't have to, but because pretty much the slot, but you're probably going to give up a couple things if you don't wait for your slot to materialize. So it's nothing to worry about. He's gonna be in for camp.
Yeah, always good to get you guys updated on that, though. We will give you the update, Makuba, when he gets signed, the last one. John, just real quick while we're on this topic, have you seen the kind of the saga that's unfolded in Cincinnati with Shamar Stewart? I know they're Cincinnati, but I do wonder, like, what goes on there, because there's not that much. At least it felt like there was never that much to debate. Most of the money is already, figured out and everything like that. What type of thing would stop Shamar Stewart from signing his rookie deal with a team like Cincinnati? Is it the team? Is it Shamar? I mean, I see people saying Shamar is kind of a hothead or whatever you want to call it. And I'm like,
it's got nothing to do with Shamar. It's all
Oh,
Cincinnati. And basically it's just got to do with the language of their contracts, not the money, because that's slotted. So there's little things you can argue about. I always compare it now to, old married couples. You're just going to argue for the sake of arguing because there's not much haggling to do. But where there is, it's things like offset money, and things like the timing of bonuses. Like a lot of teams like to defer it for some of the cash strap teams, which is typically Cincinnati. In the case of in the case of Stewart, though, I mean, I'm not there, but it's something. It's something that's even different from that, which is the typical. And it was about changing the waivers that people signed to participate in off-season work like OTAs, because a lot of guys aren't signed, especially rookie camp. It's right after the draft. A lot of guys aren't signed by that point. And you have these waivers that are pretty boilerplate around the league, and everybody signs them and everybody participates, and there's not. Well, the Bengals tried to change that. So, I mean, from all indications, I'm not on the ground in Cincinnati, but I've seen it reported in a couple places, and yeah, that's bullshit. So I don't think it has anything to do with the player, and it certainly has nothing to do with money. So I think the assumption is, and you'll see a lot, well, he's haggling money. It's got nothing to do with money. There's nowhere to haggle. And again, there's some offset language issues, which tend to be bullshit from both sides with first round picks, because offset money basically protects the team if you're a total failure and you get cut. Like Lewisine is here now. He was the rare complete bust of a first round pick, and I think he was 32nd. I think he was the last pick in the first round. And he hurt his leg. He broke his leg, and he didn't last long. He lasted one more year, and they cut him in his third year. Now, I don't know if he probably had offset language, but I don't know that for a fact. So if something like that happens and you're cut, say, in your third year, and somebody else signs you, in the case of Lewis, it was Buffalo, and then now it's Philadelphia. Basically, Minnesota's only responsible for the rest of the money. And you can take off what they're getting on their new deal, which is basically the minimum. So you get a little relief that way. But it's so rare with first round picks, especially top 10, top 15 first round picks. They're going to make it through their 4 years, because guys are not going to admit mistakes. Even if they're bad, they're going to make it through their 4 years. So that's why I say it's like old married people arguing just to have something to argue about. And then a little bit more important is the signing bonuses, because, hey, you want your money right away. And there are some cash strap teams that say, all right, we'll give you your signing bonus, which is also slotted, and then we'll give you the rest on a certain date. And it might be down, it might be December instead of September. And, you want the money earlier. So that's basically all they're haggling about. In the case of Shamar, I mean, they tried to change
Yeah.
to something different than every other team. So, yeah, I don't blame his agent at all.
Yeah, no, sure. That's a nightmare situation. I just wanted to get some clarity on that. I think it's good information too for the people where, the inner workings of the NFL are interesting sometimes. And it does show, John, the other thing I think it highlights is it does highlight that the Eagles are a very well-run organization. Not that we didn't know that already, but there's always more instances that pop up that show you that they are. And obviously this is another one there, but Jihaad Campbell is signed. Shamar Stewart is not. We'll see what ends up happening with all of that. John, mini camp now in the rear view, brother. We got a great show planned. We got Gary Cobb coming up in hour number 2. We'll have Chris Franklin tomorrow on a Football Friday edition of Birds 365. With all the spring work done, Johnny Mac, what has shifted in your mindset about the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles that are trying to repeat as Super Bowl champions? Obviously, an uphill battle for any team trying to repeat. I think they're in a pretty good position roster-wise with everything they have going on. What's changed for you so far through spring work or nothing at all? Is it still edge rushers, and what can the defense do? What's on your mind, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, real quick, one last thing on Shamar Stewart, because I apologize. I used to cover Shamar Steven, so I constantly call him that. I think I called him that again, but it's Shamar Stewart. Again, when in rookie camp, I had read a couple different reporters said he was arguing there was about some waiver issues. Now, Florio reported that it's about a provision that would allow the team to void some of the guaranteed money. So that's the offset money. And again, everything's fully guaranteed now. It has reached the end of the first round and into the second round, 33 and 34. So everything is fully guaranteed, including the 33rd and 34th pick in the second round. All first round picks for the first 4 years, not the 5th-year team option. Obviously, that's a team option. So everybody's fully guaranteed, including the first 2 picks in the second round. I haven't seen how far it's gone. I think it's only gone those 2. And Cincinnati was still haggling about offset money, about that exact instance what I said about Lewis Seen in the case of absolute disaster.
Right.
So again, I can't blame Stewart, but yeah, to your point, yeah, still edge rushers number 1, although I'm a little bit more optimistic after seeing Alex Hunt and understanding it's spring and there's no pads and all that context we usually give. But he's just, incredibly gifted. And sometimes, yeah, he needs to work on his technique and his footwork and his fundamentals and his hands and all that kind of stuff. But he's at the end of the day, he's incredibly gifted, athletically and physically, from the standpoint of what you want from an edge rusher. He's got tremendous length, and he's getting bigger and he's getting stronger. And as I said, sometimes you throw these guys into the deep end of the pool and you're like, oh, this is going to be ugly. And that's kind of what I thought last year. And it wasn't ugly. It was like, no, sometimes you're just more gifted than the other guy. And all right, your technique isn't where it's supposed to be, but you're just better than they are.
Right.
And I think we saw some of that with Alex Hunt last season. Now, as I said, my biggest concern is strength, because he was a safety at Cornell like 3 years ago.
He does look like, John, his frame, though, man, it does look like he's got a frame. Yeah, I mean, the frame is really good.
And he's not even 6'4", so he's a little under 6'4", so that part's a little bit not like I've compared him to Josh Sweat physically, but he's got this, his arm length is crazy. It's 34 and a half, which is, typically indicative of a 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guy. So, yeah, so I'm a lot higher on him. His vertical leap at 250 plus pounds is still almost 40 inches. He's a great athlete. And we'll see how it shakes out, but I'm much higher on him than I was probably coming into the spring. And I think, Sometimes all you need is an opportunity, and if he gets that opportunity, and I think he will, I think he'll be good enough. Let's put it that way. And then safety. I know we had BLG on yesterday. He's got more concerns than I do. It's not like I think it's great, because I think it's very. They're going to miss C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the field. Tough to replicate that. But I do think Makuba's the type of safety that Vic wants, and he's smart, and there's going to be some growing pains, but I think he'll be fine long term. And then corner, it's all defense. The only question on offense is Tyler Steen, and okay, let's pretend he doesn't work. All right, who cares?
Yeah, right.
Got,
next to four, Pro Bowl plus all pro offensive linemen, I think he'll be all right.
Exactly. So I can't get too worked up about that, even though I'm probably, if you want to talk about the starters, I think that are going to be the starters, which are Hunt at edge rusher, Makuba at safety, Ringo at corner, and Steen at right guard. I think I'm less high on Steen than the other three, if that makes sense. But I'm not as worried about Steen as the other three.
Right. That makes complete sense.
So, but I think like I'm not even talking about Jair Alexander till people bring it up, because I think he's going to get more money than people realize. But I saw, Schefter say something locally that, well, if he takes, $7 million. Well, yeah, if he takes that, why is he taking $7 million? So
a lot of hype on Kelee Ringo, John. Do we even need a guy like Jair? Does it even make sense, long term, or?
Well, he's a very good player. If you can get a player of that level,
tell you what, though, man, 7 games in 2 years, John. That is.
Well, 7 games in the last 2 years, so 14 total. But yeah, he's been hurt a lot. And then if you go back to 2022, he played 17, and then 2021, whatever, he played 4. So 3 of the past 4 years,
right?
He's been
less than half the season.
Yeah. So no, I wouldn't even think about it. But he is really good when he's out there. I'm not going to dismiss that, and he certainly would be better than Kelee Ringo. But again, you have to go through these things. You have to go through these startups.
I mean, they decided to rip the Band-Aid off with Slater. Move on and go with the young guys. I don't think they're going to walk back on that after a couple of weeks. I
don't think, and he looked great on the final day.
I'm seeing hype everywhere, Johnny Mac, on Kelee Ringo. I had to ask you if it was as hype for you as it is for everybody else. Yeah. Apparently, he had a very good mini camp.
Yeah, he did. Well, very good day camp. But
day camp,
yes,
right, yeah.
He did, and training camp will be the real test. Can you do it consistently every day? And I'm sure there'll be some struggles at times, like with any young player. But yeah, I mean, that's your plan. The Eagles have been very disciplined. Again, if the market isn't what I expect it to be, yeah, I guess you have to talk about it. But at that point, all right, something's up. If he's not getting 12, 13, 14, $15 million, why? Then you have to start thinking about the physical stuff. So, because the play is the play. And if everybody's saying, well, we're only going to give this guy 1 year and $7 million. I always go with Stephon Gilmore, his annual move. He gets like $10 million at 35 years old.
That's what Slay just got, $10 million from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting less than that. I don't think so.
Again, the only reason I could see it is if the market wasn't where he wanted it to be, and he decided that he wanted to go to the Eagles to try and get himself in the best position to make a big contract. I mean, Slay just signed $10 million at 35. Isaiah Rodgers got a big deal as a reserve cornerback, pretty good deal. I think $7 or $8 million he got. Maybe Jair's like, I'll go. I'll be in that defense for a year, and then I'll sign a big deal elsewhere. Now, it's not really the style of defense that he plays, but it is a successful defense, and it has been conducive to getting guys paid. Look at all the dudes who got paid leaving it last year.
Well, yeah, from the player's perspective, I guess that makes some sense. But from the Eagles' perspective, then you're right back in the same boat next year if he plays well.
And Keelee's got
and then you have less time with the cost-effective guy. The whole point of playing Kelee is to get a couple cost-effective years.
Right.
So yeah, anyway, any avenue you go down, other than he's a really good football player when he's healthy, and if you ignore the business side. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a football perspective because he's better, and you always want better players. Myles Garrett, if you took out the money, certainly Trey Hendricks and certainly TJ Watt. If you take out the money and you take out what you have to give up to get them, well, they make sense too, but they don't make sense when you bring in the business aspect of it. So, unfortunately, that's part of the business. That's the biggest part of the business. Building a team with the assets and allocations of those assets that you do have. That's the trick. That's the trick for Howie Roseman. Not just, oh, he's better, so I want that guy. Got to factor it all into it.
Yeah. What do you think the upside of Kelee is, John? He's 22 years old. I think he turns 23 later this month. He's, elite physical tool, 6'2". I think he's ran a 4.3 or a 4.4, somewhere in that range. I mean, it feels like the kid has everything you need to be a successful corner. And John, I know this isn't the pros, and I always put a disclaimer when I say this, but I love SEC football, obviously. And this kid was a freaking stud when he played at Georgia. Again, I know that's not the pros. I'm just saying, does he, can that skill set, now that he's more acclimated to NFL speed, I think he has a really big upside. What do you think about that? And what do you think his potential could be?
Oh, he's got a massive upside. We've been talking about that since he got here. That's what, there's a lot of people who said he was going to be a first-round pick, even coming out when he did.
Yeah. He could have stayed in college, another year or two, maybe.
Yeah. He's still younger than most of the cornerbacks that came out in this year's draft. That's crazy. He was the youngest player in the NFL when he got drafted. So, he's 22. Most of the cornerbacks that were drafted this year are older.
He's a year
Kelee
younger.
Ringo. Yeah, he turns 23 in June later this month. So,
and Quinion will turn 24 in July, I believe.
Yeah, so he's extremely young, extremely gifted. Obviously was raw. The Eagles thought enough, when he was on the board, they weren't thinking about it, but when he was on the board on day 3, they traded up near the top of the 4th round. They gave up a future 3rd to get him. They've been very high on this player. A.J. Brown has been very high on this player, which carries a lot of weight for me. But he was raw, only had a short period of time at Georgia. So, a lot of it is you see Quinion step right in, you see Cooper step right in. Well, Quinion played a long time in college, and even Cooper as well. So that factors into it. And yeah, I think he's going to be a really good player. Is he going to be a superstar? You can never predict that. He's got superstar level traits. He's got everything you look for in an outside cornerback in the NFL. He's got the length. He's got the speed. It's very rare you see a guy that long who's sub 4.4. Now,
and physical.
He's very physical. Does that show up on the field? We always talk about, it seems like, the lack of size with the Eagles defense all over the place. Well, not Kelee for his position. He's the outlier. He is the Josh Sweat of cornerbacks, where if you're casting a football movie and you want a corner, you're going to go pick Kelee Ringo because he looks like a corner. But there's technique, and he's had some trouble, as they say, flipping his hips at times because he is big. He is larger than most. Probably will have some trouble with shiftier guys, I would think. The guys who can stop on a dime and run those types of routes, than the bigger, size speed guys. But I mean, he's got all the potential in the world, Kelee Ringo.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things too that I think people know about this, but I do think it's worth reminding them. The best practice for Kelee Ringo in the world is going up against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in practice. I mean, John's pointing out some traits that could give him some trouble. Well, he's going to see it in practice versus A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, two of the best receivers in football. So I think that's a big help, John, for any corner trying to get ready to play here in Philly.
Oh, yeah. And the Eagles have done that in the past. I mean, they've specifically gotten their young corners, and they did it with Quignon last year. And they might decide that Kelee Ringo needs some help with those smaller, shiftier guys, and then they'll have them matched up with Devontae a lot to work on that,
right?
Or vice versa. If it's the opposite, they'll have them matched up with AJ. So yeah, and same thing with the edge rushers. That's part of it. We're talking about Alexander. He gets to go against Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson every day. That's going to make him better. So yeah, that's an underrated part of the Eagles and their developmental process at certain positions where they have really good players, and they got really good players in a lot of positions.
Yeah, they do. Kelee Ringo obviously being one of them. He was one of the biggest names coming out of minicamp that was talked about. A lot of good names, though. A lot of good stuff to speculate here. I want to stick on the rookies, John. Jihad Campbell, I think, is one that's I don't know if it's esoteric. I know we use that word on Jordan Davis, but I do think there's a lot of confusion amongst the fan base right now, whether it's admitted or not, on like where he's going to be, when he's going to be out there, what to expect when he's out there. It's just one of those ones that we're all hoping he's a great player, but I don't know if there's much truth or clarity to where he's going to line up or when that's going to be. And I'm not saying you have those answers, but I do wonder if that's going to be not a problem, but something that's a talking point as we get closer to training camp into the season.
Well, it's been a talking point, but yeah, I mean, on the night of the draft, I think, forget about short term. This is the long term pick. Forget about short term. I realize that's hard for people. It was hard for people last year with Cooper. I'm like, well, who cares if he is on the field week one? Ultimately, if he's here for 10 years. And sure enough, he wasn't on the field for week one, and he was on the field for week 6, and he turns into what he turned into. It's like nobody talks about that now, except when they're talking about Jihad, because a similar thing might happen. The health part of it, and I talked about this with Nick on before minicamp on Tuesday. Nolan Smith had talked to us the week prior and said he's ready to strike. He's ready to strike. And we debated on the show, like, well, you're really going to have him cleared for contact basically 4 months after the Super Bowl where he tore his triceps for one day? I found it hard to believe the Eagles would do that. Sure enough, they didn't do it. I don't think it matters either way that much, because if you're cleared, you're cleared, which is what Nick kind of explained. And if you're ready to go, you're ready to go. But there's also some common sense that goes into it. So the medical stuff is out of everybody's hands. And Vic said August. So that's our best timetable. Nick never gives timetables. He was asked and he refused to give a timetable after Vic was asked. Said some guys, and he's right from that perspective, Some guys heal quicker than other guys. Some guys get through rehab quicker. Some guys get through rehab slower. So you don't want to put a ton of pressure on individuals, because the minute you give a timetable, what if he's not out there in early August? Because he said August, and the questions are going to start. Well, you said August, Big. Well, August can mean August 31st. You know?
Right. No, absolutely. First game he's available. Where would you anticipate he would be? Is it a package type player, or a pass rush package type player, or do you expect him to be a starter at off ball linebacker? Where do you expect him to be? I think that's another question that people just don't know how to answer yet.
Well, I think, and that goes back to Cooper as well. I think the easiest way to get him on the field early is a situational player, but a lot of that, but his position's going to be stacked linebacker, all-ball linebacker. But the easiest way to get him on the field early would be in a sub package, as a sub package player, so not a full-time player. And that would be easier to get him on the field as an edge rusher. Ultimately, because Nakobe's not going to be ready either, starting linebackers are going to be Zach Bond and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So a lot of it depends on Trotter. Like, how well is he playing? You know, if he's not playing well, there's more need to get Jihad Campbell on the field, and need could be everything. Like I said, where the Cooper thing comes off the rails a little bit in that comparison, his injury was not nearly as serious. He had a hamstring. It wasn't, Jihad had labrum surgery. That's one. But two is the Eagles had Avonte Maddox, which I know fans had checked out on Avonte Maddox, but they trusted Avonte Maddox. They don't have an Avonte Maddox right now at linebacker. They have a guy who hasn't played for the most part, Jeremiah Trotter. And behind that, you have Smile Munden, who's a rookie 5th-round pick. So you don't have a ton without Nakobe. And Nakobe's going to be probably on the PUP list to start the season. So until Nakobe's back, you might need him on the field if Jeremiah Trotter does not perform well. If Jeremiah Trotter performs well, I don't think it's as big an issue. I think you get him on the field where you can as a situational pass rusher, most likely. So a lot of it depends on Trotter and how he performs with his opportunity early in the season.
One of the most exciting things you talked about recently, John, on the show was when you said that Zach Bond was working with Jeremiah Washburn. Give us some insight on what that can do, or what that could look like for this Eagles defense. With, people, you say that and people are like, well, what do you mean? Bring some clarity on that. Zach Bond, Vic likes to obviously do his specialty blitzes and things like that, or her zone blitzes where you drop one and rush one. If you got Jihad Campbell and Zach Bond, who both have skill sets like that, that gives you a lot of freedom to do whatever you want, and full offensive or full quarterbacks left and right. What do you see with that? And give some more insight into that.
Yeah, that's the long-term goal. The long-term goal is that, whether that's the second half of this season or, 2026 even. That's the long-term goal, is to have sort of interchangeable pieces that can, fool the quarterback essentially. So, mugging the A gaps, for instance, you could put both of them on either side of the A gaps in front of the center. The quarterback's looking at him saying, all right, who's coming? Who's dropping? Maybe both drop. Maybe one comes, maybe both come. Doubtful, but they do blitz occasionally. And you could play a lot of tricks with the quarterback. And the whole design of Vic Fangio's scheme is to make the quarterback progress post-snap, not pre-snap. Don't give out information pre-snap, make him adjust post-snap, and even if it's a tick, a half a second, slow him down from that perspective. And that's what they're trying to do. And in theory, those two players together would give you a lot of options to sort of play with the quarterback's head,
right?
When it comes to obvious passing situations.
Which is kind of a genius setup, John. I mean, you always bring up that clip of Brady, right? And talking about quarterbacks, and the number one job of a quarterback, get your team into the right play. And if you could do it pre-snap, that's all the advantage, you know. And Vic is trying to stop that from happening, and it gives you a big advantage.
Yeah, it does. And especially with younger quarterbacks who, you know, have some difficulty processing, it could give them a lot of headaches. And then there's just the athleticism and the traits and the skill set. They're both long. They're both athletic. They can both cover, which is important to Vic, as we know. Even though they're not going to do it a ton, you need to have that skill set. So, and the Eagles also like Campbell's range and his length to be a tackler. So they think he can be, and Howie used the term, I think, on draft night, a weapon, a defensive weapon. And, you know, playing different roles. And I've said it from the start. He might be a traditional weak side linebacker on first down and second down, and then turn into an edge rusher on third down. Or he turns into a gap rusher on third down. And, you know, so a different type player that's really been here. And even that Zach was, I mean, he didn't do it that much last year. Now he might do it more this year. And, you know, unfortunately, this is the time of year where we only get sort of clusters with the players, you know, with other reporters. I do want to talk to Zach about how much he worked with Washburn last year, because I didn't see it a lot. So I think Vic's even trying to expand his game as well, so they can have those duplicates essentially. But it's going to be mostly Jihad, because in the case with Jihad out there, I'm pretty comfortable that Zach's going to be the middle linebacker, so he's going to have more responsibilities. So from that standpoint, he's probably not going to have as much freedom. But that's the long-term goal. Those two players creating havoc on third down.
That could be scary, man. If that comes to fruition, that really could be a scary duo of linebackers there. Could you believe it? We're talking about a scary duo of linebackers here in Philly, something we never thought we'd be talking about just a year ago. So great stuff on that front. We're going to get to our first commercial break. All right, we got plenty to talk about. In hour number 2, we're going to talk to JAKIB, Gary Cobb. I believe, was Gary down there this week? He's normally down there. I don't know if he was down there for mini camp this week, but I got to ask.
I saw him. I didn't see him at mini camp. I saw him at the second OTA, I believe, is when I saw him, because I was talking to him about AJ's. I told that story about AJ's quads, and
right.
Gary was enamored. It's hard not to be enamored with those quads, and then I just joked to him. I said, "Yeah, they don't create as much explosion as Saquon's quads." I can tell you
not
that.
all big quads are created equal.
Yeah.
I guess that's how it goes. But good stuff there. So we'll talk to JAKIB later on in the show. Still plenty of stuff to break down. I do want to talk some offensive football when we come back from the commercial break. Dallas Goedert is back. So what's that look like? And just the kind of the progression of the offense this year with Kevin Patullo. I happen to think Kevin Patullo could have a better offense than Kellen Moore did. We'll talk a little bit about that after the break. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. We got a great crowd in here as always. It's the off season, and we'll be talking to you guys all through the off season. We do appreciate all the viewership, the likes, the comments, the shares, and the support, the super chats, the financial support obviously goes a very long way as well. So we appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Hit that like button. We're going to take our first commercial break here. But before we do that, I do want to tell you guys about the Wildwoods. All right. A lot of you guys were super hype about us getting the Wildwoods back as a sponsor. I was super hyped about getting the Wildwoods back as a sponsor. And I want to tell you guys about an incredible giveaway that they're doing this year. I'm going to put the link in the chat for you guys so you guys can click on it and go. But they're giving away a family vacation to the Wildwoods. You win a 4-day, 3-night stay in a Wildwoods hotel for a family of 4 that you can win, and you can sign up now. All you got to do is go to that link, put your information in, and you'll be entered. And there's a bunch of great stuff that they're going to give you: a splash zone, water park passes, Maurice Pier amusement passes, boardwalk tram car passes. How about that? Watch the tram car, please. So you guys can do that. Bike rental and all sorts of other stuff at the Wildwood. So go and enter into that giveaway. And if you're not entered into the giveaway, get your vacation booked to the Wildwoods. It's the summertime, everybody, and there's no better place to go than Wildwood, New Jersey. So get your vacation in, and we appreciate the Wildwoods for sponsoring Birds 365 this summer. We'll be right back in 3 minutes, everybody.
Welcome to the Jet Setters.